It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and Sisko's making a personal log. Something particularly unpleasant has gone down, and it's so bad he can't even talk to Dax about it, which means it must be worse than going on sabbatical to do a murder like what she'd done a few years back. Regardless, he's choosing to record it to get everything straight in his head. The flashback story begins with him posting the latest casualty list for those lost in the ongoing Dominion War. Dax knows a name on the list, the captain of a ship which disappeared near Romulan space. Since signing a non-aggression treaty with them, Dominion ships have been kicking the Federation in the bollocks by nipping across Romulan territory, with the Romulans looking the other way. That would be a whole lot harder for the Dominion to do if the Romulans joined our side, thinks Bashir, which is what makes Sisko decide he's going to make it happen. A bit of improv with Dax about how that conversation might go down leaves him with the conclusion that the Romulans won't do shit based on words. Proof the Dominion is already planning to target the Romulans next would do the job, and it's very likely such plans actually exist on Cardassia. Lucky for us, then, that we have a former member of the Obsidian Order on the station, and one who still has some connections back home, despite his exile. Plain simple Garak's up for sticking one to the Dominion, though warns Sisko that such things may end up becoming rather unpleasant. Sisko doesn't see how that's much different to the way things are now, and thinks ending the war through involving the Romulans is worth the price. News he receives while in bed one night seems to confirm his conclusion. The Federation world of Beta Z has been invaded and conquered by Jem'Hadar. Good news for those of you who aren't fond of Lwaxana Troi, but bad news for all the Federation systems now in striking distance of the new Dominion staging point. That's enough for Sisko to check on plain simple Garak's progress. He was able to find some people who were willing to try and help. Unfortunately, the Dominion found them as well, which is why they've all done it dead. Somebody in the Dominion takes security very seriously indeed, which is why plain simple Garak thinks gathering proof from Cardassia is now off the table. That doesn't mean we have no way of showing the Romulans that they're in danger, though. It just means we'll have to make some shit up for ourselves. Sisko's telling his log that the idea to just straight-up bullshit the Romulans probably should have given him pause. The problem is that plain simple Garak was right. Flashback time again, and plain simple Garak is explaining there's a Romulan senator we need to convince. He's called Vreenak, and he's both powerful and well-connected. Unfortunately, he's also the most vocal supporter of the Dominion, as evidenced by him personally negotiating the non-aggression treaty. Not a friend of the Federation, then, which is why plain simple Garak thinks convincing him will be sufficient to make the entire Romulan government take note. He's going to be visiting 5th Uncle Wayun the Creepy soon, and plain simple Garak thinks a secret invite from Sisko while he's in the area will be accepted. When he gets here, we'll show him an incriminating recording stuck on an official Cardigan thumb drive, one of a type that's heavily restricted as they're used for government records due to being tamper-proof. The drive itself will be real, the recording we put on it somewhat less so. Of course, having an official bow on it won't make Vreenak believe anything we put in front of him, so we'll need an excellent holographic forger too. Plain simple Garak knows just the lad. All Sisko has to do is stop the Klingons from executing him as he's currently in prison. Sisko saved Gowron and the entire Klingon Empire from Founder control a couple of years back, so getting one criminal as a favour isn't too difficult. Our forger is thankful for the help and willing to repay the favour, though somewhat concerned when he learns plain simple Garak is involved. Maybe that's why he gets shit-faced in Quark's bar and causes trouble. To be more specific, he shanks Quark for trying to stop him harassing a Darbo girl. An official record of the forger being here would be bad news for Sisko, so he persuades Quark to not press charges by using the Ferengi technique. He offers a great big fuck-off bribe. Current Sisko is telling his log that this was the point where he started to worry about how things were going. Then he remembered how many people were dying daily and decided he could live with a bit of bribery. Just as well, really, as his next conversation with plain simple Garak runs along the same lines. He's found a supplier for one of the special super secure thumb drives. Unfortunately, the lad in question doesn't want money. He wants quite a lot of a special medical juice that can be used for some very dodgy things indeed, an item so potentially dangerous that the Federation strictly controls its use. Sisko decides he's reached his limit and says the plan is off. Then he wavers and says it would be impossible anyway given the quantity requested. Plain Simple Garak suggests he may be able to haggle the amount. The final count is less than half of what the guy originally asked for, but it's still more than enough for Bashir to shit a brick when Sisko tells him he wants it. Bashir insists on having the order in writing and says he'll be raising an official protest, but even this isn't enough to dissuade Sisko. Fifth Uncle Wayoon the Creepy and Damar Dawson Biggs are talking about the invasion of Romulus. To be more accurate, their holographic copies are, in between sniping at each other to sell the whole thing more plausibly. Sisko seems to think it's as good as we're going to get it, so we stick it on the single-use thumb drive. Not that the forger's now free to go, that will only happen if it passes the real test, otherwise he's straight back to a Klingon prison. Briefly, anyway. Present-day Sisko is telling his log that his outburst here might suggest things were worse than he originally thought at the time. Okay, Starfleet had signed off on the plan, but he's still the guy who had to sell it to Vreenak. To the flashback once more, and Vreenak's on the way. Plain Simple Garak plans to have a nosy around his ship while Sisko's keeping him busy, the chance to nick some intelligence, always worth exploring. Vreenak arrives and proves every bit the dick Sisko expected. The pre-show chat goes about the way Sisko and Dax thought it would, with Vreenak willing to listen, but unwilling to believe any of it without proof. To a holosuite we go then to display the goods. Vreenak watches closely as the Dominion's best and brightest here in the Alpha Quadrant talk about invading his home. He watches Sisko closely too, and wants to examine the super special thumb drive as well, so Sisko hands it over. There's nothing for Sisko to do but wait for Vreenak's response and worry about all the shit that'll come his way if he's rumbled. There's rather a lot of it, not least of which the possibility of the Romulans joining the war on the side of the Dominion, so it comes as rather a disappointment when Vreenak discovers it's all bollocks. Present-day Sisko tells his log how bad a result this was, which was a bit of a pisser after so many questionable choices. Vreenak's inevitable very public denunciation might even make current allies think twice about continuing to be so. To the flashback once more then, and it's a couple of days later when he hears that Vreenak's shuttle has had an unfortunate kaboom on the way back to Romulus. Deliberate, apparently, and the Tal Shiar have found evidence to suggest it was the Dominion. Terrible news, of course, but on the plus side, such an outrage might end up causing the Romulans to enter the war. While everybody else is celebrating the turn of events, things are starting to click in Sisko's brain. We're in Plain Simple Garak's shop, and Sisko's first punch knocks him on his ass. He doesn't deny planting the bomb on Vreenak's ship, though says he genuinely hoped the forgery would do the job. You don't succeed in his line of work by relying on hope, though, which is why the forger has had a rather unfortunate accident as well. That news earns him another bonk on the noggin, so Plain Simple Garak tells Sisko to knock it off. Sisko's got precisely what he wanted. The Tal Shiar will find the recording among the wreckage, only they'll assume whatever made Vreenak consider it a fake was damage from the explosion. That, plus evidence of Dominion sabotage after visiting Fifth Uncle Wayoon, will make them conclude the Dominion were trying to prevent him from getting home with it. And isn't that why Sisko involved him in the first place, to do all of the deeply unpleasant shit he wasn't willing to do himself? If he's so upset about being sullied by some of the splashback, he should remember that his morals have probably just paid for victory over the Dominion. And that's why present-day Sisko is making this recording. The Romulans just declared war on the Dominion and are already kicking the ever-loving fuck out of them. Everybody on our side is delighted, and all Sisko has to do to join them is swallow his ethics. And that, he's been surprised to discover during this retelling, is something he can do. After reliving the whole thing, he's decided the price is one he's prepared to pay. His last act is to delete the log he's just recorded, so we'll leave him to come to terms with the man he's willing to be. Until the next adventure. Some Starfleet officers might find the idea of balking at a little accessory to murder positively naive. Catherine Janeway notched up a bit of the old genocide on her watch after all. But for Sisko, this is a big thing. And the big thing is that it's not really the murder which bothers him, it's that he would do it again. Sisko's lived his life following rules of ethics that he considered more important than his continued existence. He's sworn to lay down his life to uphold them. To face the realization that those lofty ideals are negotiable under extreme circumstances is thus a heavy blow. This isn't the first time he's bypassed those ideals in pursuit of a goal, of course. We've already seen Sisko poison bomb an entire fucking planet to catch one guy. And don't rush to the comments to say it was just poison against humans, so it's alright. That assumes he'd ensured there were enough vessels to make a full evacuation possible, ignores that collective punishment is a literal war crime, and doesn't even touch on uprooting a population being just plain wrong. If you don't see the problem with his actions, then, frankly, you've completely missed the moral of the entire Marquis plotline. Anywho, the point is that Sisko's done some questionable stuff, but this situation is different. Part of that is because it's so wide-reaching, the involvement of an entire species in a war. Part of it is the inherent dishonesty, the premise being a fiction, even if it is likely based on fact. Part of it is being so close to the reality, his direct link to multiple murders. But I think all of that is secondary to what really bothers him. He's realized this makes him prime material for Starfleet Command. Sisko has realized he's willing to farm out his awful shit to other people, so he retains plausible deniability. He's realized he's just like the admirals who sat by while Cardigan and Romulan fleets went off to genocide the Founders. He's realized he's just like the admirals who told him to go and solve the Marquis problem. They saw threats to the Federation and wanted them gone. The how was irrelevant. Both of those situations had consequences which supported the Federation's continued existence, but undermined the stated principles upon which it stands. And now we've seen a similar decision made up close. Now we've seen Sisko wrestle with ideology versus reality, and how a moral man will make immoral choices so others don't have to. And that has the potential to reframe a lot of what we've seen from admirals before. The choices we considered callous, the ignored suffering of those affected, they're all made so that people inside the utopia can stay there. Is it possible that every admiral making those decisions each had their own accessory to murder event and realized they too were willing to pay that price for the majority? Could such an event even be an entry requirement? Following that logic, then, Starfleet is the sewage system underneath a bustling metropolis, a sometimes routine, sometimes difficult job that those above prefer not to consider. And occasionally, those who work in it are forced to get very dirty indeed, so much so that they feel they'll never be truly clean ever again. All of this is what makes today's episode so riveting. Sisko's forced to accept that good men can perform evil, that sometimes it's even necessary for the safety of the majority, but also how this doesn't make it right. There's a difference between those who perform such actions with regret and those who embrace them with glee. Remorse is a sign of your humanity. What we're watching in real time is a man of high morals coming to terms with which parts of his soul he's willing to sell so others don't have to. Sisko is a hero. Sisko is damned. Both of those statements can be true simultaneously. In case you hadn't figured it out yet, I'm firmly in the camp that considers In the Pale Moonlight to be at the very apex of Trek. That's not difficult to understand. I've been waxing lyrical for literal years now about how much I love politics and scheming over grand space battles and kabooms. Dubious ethics and troubled characters are right up my alley too, and there being a very healthy serving of plain simple Garak doesn't hurt either. His actions in today's story support a belief I've shared here before. No hero, no saint, no paragon of virtue will ever be as memorable as a well-crafted bastard. But the main reason for my love of this one is that it lays bare the inherent cost of maintaining a society like the Federation, namely that there must be those willing to sacrifice their own inclusion in order to assure its continuation, and that such responsibilities must never be given to anybody who won't lose sleep over them. I couldn't allow myself to gush praise over this without finding a single flaw, though, so let's finish by being petty and pointing one out. There's a continuity issue with the isolinear and optolithic rods during the forging scene. The console our forger is using has 5 holes. Front shots of him using it show a blue optolithic rod in the center with orange isolinear rods to the sides. Rear and side shots, however, show that center hole occupied by an isolinear rod instead. I presume somebody mixed them up during a reset to shoot from different angles. A minor thing, I'll grant you, and in such a good episode, but I think it's important to remember that everything has its flaws. That is, after all, the moral of the story. End of episode.
You know, I could live with all this walking if it were on something a bit more comfortable. Nice bit of grass maybe, or some decking. I'd settle for bare concrete at this point. These rocks are doing a proper number on the pads of my feet. How are you not complaining?
Because they're not real feet. Just remember that the signals you're processing are simulated, and shunt them straight to storage when you reach the part of the data to do with physical sensation.
Yeah, I can't do the old there is no spoon bollocks. Maybe it's 'cause physical bodies are new to you.
I had a physical body when I was a computer too, you know. It's just that the body was a starship.
Don't be pedantic, lad. It's not like you spent a lot of time worrying about rocks under your feet.
Actually, if you go back and rewatch the finale of Season 2, you'll find that I used my feet to land on a particularly rocky planet when the crew...
Shut up a second.
How rude.
Shut up. Can you hear that?
All I can hear is you being rude.
Listen. Is that a voice?
We showed them good. We showed them good.